Hey there, let's talk about something juicy today, the power plays that happen in relationships, specifically what I like to call female calculation. Now, don't get it twisted. This isn't about painting women as these scheming manipulators. It's about understanding the strategic moves that happen in the dating game, why they exist, and how they work. So picture this. You're on a date, and you're wondering whether to text back right away or wait a bit. Or maybe you're deciding how much of your crazy family drama to share on that third date. Guess what? You're already using calculation in your relationship. We all do it, and there's a fascinating history behind why. Let me drop a name you might remember from history class, Niccolo Machiavelli. This dude wrote The Prince back in the 1500s, basically a playbook for gaining and keeping power. While he was talking about politics, a lot of those same principles show up in our love lives. Throughout history, women especially had to get strategic because, let's face it, they didn't have much formal power. They couldn't own property, vote, or even open a bank account without a husband's signature until surprisingly recently. So they developed other ways to gain influence and protect themselves. Think about your grandma or great-grandma. The advice they got about relationships wasn't just be yourself. It was a complex set of rules about how to act, when to show interest, and how to secure commitment. Some of that might seem outdated now, but the psychology behind it is still fascinating. Here's the deal. In relationships, we're all trying to figure out, is this person trustworthy? Are they into me? Is this going somewhere? And we don't always get straight answers. So we look for signals and create little tests along the way, like when you mention something important to see if they remember it later, or when you deliberately don't reach out first to see if they will. We're gathering data points, right? Now let's get real about why this happens more with women. It's not because women are born more calculating. It's a mixture of evolution and social conditioning. From an evolutionary standpoint, women historically took on more risk in reproduction. 9 months of pregnancy plus years of child rearing meant the stakes for choosing the wrong partner were higher. Then, society piled on all these expectations about being the relationship caretakers, emotional managers, and keepers of social connections. I was talking to my friend Jake the other day, and he was complaining about a woman he'd been dating who played too many games. When I dug deeper, turns out what she was doing was not immediately sleeping with him and not rearranging her whole schedule for their dates. That's not game playing. That's just having boundaries and a life. But sometimes, any strategic thinking by women gets labeled as manipulation, when the exact same behavior from men might be called keeping options open or taking it slow. Let's talk about some real-world examples of what this calculation looks like. Have you ever been in a situation where you're really into someone, but you don't want to come across too eager? So maybe you wait a bit before texting back, or you mention casual plans with friends so they know you're not just sitting around waiting for them. That's a form of strategic scarcity. Or maybe you're dating someone new and keeping your dating app active just to see what else is out there. That's creating options. These aren't deceptive if you're honest about where you stand. They're just ways of managing the pace and protecting yourself until you know what you're getting into. Social media has made all of this so much more complicated. Now there's this whole digital layer to relationships. Do you like their Instagram post right away or wait a bit? Do you share that you're out at that cool new restaurant, knowing they'll see it? Do you post that picture with your attractive coworker? Every one of these decisions carries strategic weight in today's relationships. I had a hilarious conversation with my roommate last week. She was stressing about whether to accept her new boyfriend's Facebook friend request, because then he'll be able to see all my old photos and posts. We spent an hour going through her timeline to see what he would discover. That's modern calculation in action. Here's where things get tricky though. There's a big difference between healthy strategic thinking and toxic manipulation. If you're deliberately making someone jealous, lying about your feelings, or using affection as a weapon, you've crossed into the danger zone. Real talk. That stuff might work short term, but it creates relationships built on fear and control. not love and trust. The healthiest relationships eventually move from strategic thinking to honest communication. I was in a relationship once where I felt like I was constantly walking on eggshells, analyzing every word before I said it, trying to predict how he'd react. Let me tell you, that's exhausting. And ultimately, it fell apart because no one can keep up that level of calculation forever. The real goal should be finding someone you can gradually be more authentic with, not someone you always have to strategize around. It's crazy how much dating advice out there is basically teaching calculation without calling it that. Don't text back for at least 4 hours. Never accept a weekend date proposed after Wednesday. Don't say I love you first. Some of these rules might have practical wisdom behind them, but when they become rigid formulas, they disconnect us from our authentic feelings and needs. Culture plays a huge role in all this too. I have friends from different backgrounds, and it's fascinating how relationship strategies vary. My friend Sarah comes from a traditional Middle Eastern family, where dating openly isn't really done, so the calculation there involves careful family introductions and supervised meetings. My friend Tasha is navigating the Atlanta dating scene as a successful black woman, dealing with different expectations and stereotypes. The specific strategies might look different, but everyone's trying to figure out how to find genuine connection while protecting themselves from potential hurt. Let's talk about dating apps for a sec. Talk about a calculation minefield. From choosing your most flattering, but still realistic photos, to crafting the perfect bio that makes you sound cool but not trying too hard. It's all strategic. And then there's the whole calculation around messaging. How soon? How much? How personal? One study found that messages sent on dating apps that hit a sweet spot of thoughtfulness, not just hey, without being too intense, got the best response rates. That's literally calculation being studied scientifically. Power dynamics make all of this super interesting. Back in the day, women's calculation was often about securing financial stability through marriage. Now that more women are financially independent, the calculation has shifted. It's less, will he be a good provider? And more, will he respect my career? Or will he pull his weight in the household? Women with options can afford to be choosier about emotional intelligence and compatibility, not just stability. I remember my mum telling me about dating in the 70s and how just having her own apartment and job completely changed her approach compared to her mother's generation. She didn't need to rush into marriage for financial reasons, which gave her freedom to think strategically about compatibility instead. Here's something wild. Research shows that playing hard to get actually works, but only up to a point and only when there's already interest there. It creates what psychologists call the scarcity principle. We value what seems less available, but push it too far, and people just move on. The sweet spot is showing enough interest to keep them engaged while maintaining some mystery. It's like a dance, really. I think what's healthiest is bringing awareness to our own patterns. Like, I know I tend to overshare too early with guys I'm excited about, so I consciously pace myself now. That's not being fake, it's just recognizing that intimacy builds better when it develops gradually. My friend Mike realized he always chased women who were emotionally unavailable, recreating his relationship with his distant mom. Once he saw that pattern, he could make different choices. That's using self-awareness as a strategy, and it's totally healthy. Media has given us some wild ideas about relationship calculation. Think about shows like The Bachelor, where strategic thinking isn't just normalized, it's the whole premise. Or rom-coms, where elaborate schemes, that would be straight up stalking in real life, are portrayed as romantic. These portrayals can make us think relationships should be these complex games, when really, the best connections usually come when we're brave enough to be relatively straightforward. I was watching this old 90s movie the other night, where the main character pretends to need math tutoring just to spend time with her crush. The whole time I'm thinking, girl, just tell him you think he's cute. But then I realized I've definitely done some version of that accidental run-in with someone I was interested in. Let's get real about something. Men calculate too. They might do it differently, but guys definitely think strategically about when to suggest exclusivity, how much to share about their feelings, when to introduce you to friends or family. The difference is that male calculation isn't labeled and analyzed the same way. It's often just called dating, instead of being seen as some manipulative strategy. My brother was just telling me about how he deliberately waited until the 5th date to mention he was really into this woman because he didn't want to come on too strong. That's calculation. But he didn't see it that way until I pointed it out. I think the healthiest approach is what I call mindful dating, being strategic not to manipulate others, but to make choices aligned with your actual values and needs. It means being thoughtful about pacing, setting appropriate boundaries, and gathering information about compatibility before going all in emotionally. It means recognizing that some protective strategies probably developed from past hurts, and evaluating whether they're still serving you. Here's an example. Maybe you were cheated on before, so now you have a strategy of checking your date's phone when they go to the bathroom. That's coming from a real hurt, but it's ultimately harmful to trust building. A healthier strategic approach might be taking more time to observe consistency before fully committing, or being clear about your expectations around fidelity early on. The really interesting thing is how calculation tends to decrease as genuine trust increases. In my healthiest relationship, I found I wasn't thinking strategically nearly as much because I felt secure. I wasn't analyzing text response times or carefully planning what to reveal when. That's the paradox. Some initial strategic thinking might help you find a compatible partner, but a successful relationship eventually requires letting much of that calculation go. So what's the takeaway here? I think it's about recognizing that some degree of calculation is normal and even healthy in relationships. It's how we pace intimacy, set boundaries, and protect ourselves while we're figuring out if someone is trustworthy. The problems come when calculation becomes manipulation, when we're trying to control rather than connect, or when we're so busy strategizing that we never allow ourselves to be known. The best relationships have room for both strategic thinking and authentic vulnerability. They involve smart choices about compatibility and timing, but also the courage to gradually let down your guard. They acknowledge power dynamics, but work toward balance. And they recognize that while Machiavelli might have some insights for the early dating phase, lasting love requires eventually putting down the playbook and risking genuine connection. So next time you're debating whether to text back right away or wondering how much of yourself to reveal on that next date, know that you're engaging in an age-old human dance. The key is to make sure your strategies align with who you really want to be and the kind of relationship you truly want to create. Because at the end of the day, the most powerful position isn't the one where you've strategically won someone's interest. It's the one where you've created a connection that's real enough that you don't have to calculate quite so much anymore. What do you think? Does that resonate with your experiences in the dating world? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, keep it real out there in the relationship